Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Expansion Podcast. And many thanks to JP of Wolf Spirit Radio for broadcasting it for me. He produces and broadcasts it for me. And I also have a YouTube channel, which is Chelynn T, CHELYNNT. So if you just want to do a search, I have a couple of podcasts on there with some other interviewees. And we all in the podcasts, I discuss Ayurvedic medicine, which is a traditional medicine originally from India. It's believed to be over 3,000 years old, but probably even older than that. So often I will talk about Ayurvedic medicine, and also, depending on the guest, I will explore the ideas of the expansion of human consciousness with them. And so for today's podcast, I'm very, very excited to have healer, a bioacoustic healer, and her name is Sharry Edwards. She's been working in her field, I believe, for over 30 years. And so we just want to welcome Sharry today. How are you?
I'm trying to be perfect. No, I shouldn't say that. I should say just trying to be good. How's that?
That is, I know. It does always take effort, doesn't it? And awareness. I believe.
I start my day with, allow this day to be for the benefit of all concerned. And boy, sometimes it can go in a lot of directions.
I can imagine, yes. Well, I'm a big fan of improv. I like the idea of sometimes just doing something without too much preparation and just trusting in whatever comes in the moment. So I feel like this podcast today is sort of delving into that idea of diving in. And something tells me that you're quite able to do that, which is great.
I love that kind of show.
Good, wonderful. So just a little bit about Ayurvedic medicine. Sharry and I will be talking mostly about her work because it is completely fascinating. Her work has a lot to do with the use of sound, I believe, to both diagnose and to create healing within an individual. But in Ayurvedic medicine, in Sankhya philosophy, which is the philosophy that Ayurvedic medicine is based upon, there's this understanding that the primordial sound of creation, which is Om, a lot of people are very familiar with that chant because I think of the yoga movement in the U.S. and probably in Europe as well. But the primordial sound of creation is believed to be the sound Om, and everything else manifested from that original sound. So, Sharry, I would love to hear from you, kind of going back to the beginning for yourself. When did you discover your abilities to be able to perceive sound and work with sound? Could you talk a little bit about that?
We'll have to take a step back and say we're not allowed to say diagnose. We can evaluate, and we also have to remind people that the body heals itself, and we just provide the information. It's much like vitamin C doesn't cure a cold, it's what your body does with it.
Absolutely.
So that's going to keep us out of trouble with the FDA and all the government people who decide that we shouldn't be doing what we're doing. I don't ever remember not hearing the sounds. And there's a lot of different stories about how my mutations in my ears came about. I had a near drowning experience when I was about 5. And there is an organ in the ear that is usually dormant in humans, and it's called a sacculus, and mine is active. And that's one of the organs that a dolphin has that humans don't usually have. And I have always heard sounds from animals and plants in the woods and people. And another ingredient in this whole system is that I was raised in Appalachia with no running water, no electricity, no indoor plumbing. So there weren't all of this extraneous sounds that a lot of people are exposed to today. And there's a theory by Alfred Tomatis, well, by a lot of people. And they say that you can't produce unless you hear it. So I can hear sounds that other people can't, and I can produce them as pure tones, something that humans aren't supposed to be able to do. And when you hear these sounds, I just thought everybody heard them. But it turns out that when we started talking about this and writing about it, that people thought it was a psychic. But to me, psychic means you know something you know, but you don't know how you know it. And we know how we know this now. Johns Hopkins University proved that there really is a sound coming out of your ear. And that's what I was hearing. And I think that's what a lot of psychics and intuitives feel or hear or know, and they don't know how they know it. But it really is this signature sound that I think is a holographic representation of your brain. And that sound, your brain runs on sound and math and frequency, and that's what's sent down through your body and your neural network to sort of manage you. But at the same time, I think it's sent out to other people around you, and people really know what's going on. Privacy is an illusion because they're really hearing these sounds. They are just sometimes too polite to ask you about it or to tell you about it.
Do you think that people perceive sound with more than just their ears then?
Absolutely. They have proven that your skin has sound receptors.
That makes sense.
It's a different octave. We speak at about 100 cycles up to about 400 cycles per second. But I think there are sounds below and above that we can't hear, but it's really there, but we just don't have an apparatus to pick it up. Like a dog whistle. We can't hear dog whistles, but they're certainly there because the dog will come when you blow the whistle. So there's other sounds and frequencies in our environment that I think we respond to, heaters and fans and lights. And I think they make up a lot of our mood.
Absolutely.
At the same time, and have you ever read any of Jean Yule's books?
No, I haven't.
E.L. She wrote Clan of the Cave Bear, Valley of the Horses, Mammoth Hunters. And there was a character in there and his daughter that they dealt with herbs. And they could smell an herb and know what it was used for or listen to an herb. I think we forgot that somewhere. But I think it's been known to humans and we forgot to remember how to use it.
Sure. I do feel like it's coming back. I feel like, well, in Ayurvedic medicine, it is about connecting a person with the rest of existence, and that an individual is not separate from anything else around it, and that we're all made up of the same qualities. And so I know that there's different qualities in sound. And so in Ayurvedic medicine, we use the senses, all the senses. So the sense of touch, hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, to heal and to also assess, what's going on with the patient. So these qualities, like some of the, just to give you an example and see if this relates to your work, some of the qualities, there are 10 pairs of opposites. So, for example, hot and cold are two opposite qualities. Moist and dry are other opposite qualities, heavy and light. So whenever we're looking at an imbalance within an individual, we see how are they in harmony with the rest of nature or in disharmony, and how to bring them back in via these qualities. So can you talk a little bit about your work, and does it somewhat relate to that idea of sound as quality?
Well, let's jump back a bit and say frequency.
Frequency.
Because frequency is sound, frequency is color, frequency is smell, frequency is everything. So if we really look at sound as just a form of frequency or an octave of sound, everything has a sound, whether it's an herb or an oil or an emotion. And the body is incredibly redundant. People who have cramps in their ankles at night usually have low iron. And when we look at the map of the body, the frequency of the peroneus muscles going to the ankle are within a 1/100th of the frequency designated as iron. So if you've got these muscle cramps, get up and eat some prunes and it'll probably take care of it. So the redundancy of the body, which is what makes our stuff work, because we've proven that people with similar vocal anomalies, I was going to say sour notes, but like sour notes in a song, people with similar frequencies that are kind of out of tune and unbalanced have similar, if not identical, vocal anomalies. And that can be trouble sometimes. Progesterone, which is a female hormone that helps with clearing the uterus of the nest it made for an incoming baby, it deals with pregnenolone. But pregnenolone and marijuana is the same frequency. And that's why sometimes you'll get marijuana positives when it's really a certain time of the month for a woman. Because it's the same frequency, and that's how they measure everything in biochemistry, just by a frequency. And the receptors for marijuana and progesterone are the same in the body. You just can't go buy a receptor over the counter. You have to do it with sound to open that receptor to receive the pregnenolone or the progesterone. Everything is frequency, and things can be misinterpreted for something else, like marijuana can be misinterpreted for progesterone.
That actually kind of supports the idea that we're actually all the same stuff, like us and other objects and other living beings. We're all made up of the same stuff, and it's just how it manifests, which will create this idea of difference. So are you able to just listen with your own ears without any equipment? You're able to assess someone's voice, their patterns, their quality in their voice? Or do you need technology in order to assess someone?
I can absolutely assess someone, and that's why they call me in for animals and babies and people who are comatose. But I can only give one sound, sometimes two. But if we look at the vocal print, we're looking at 100,000 points on a vocal print. And we can look at the highest highs and the lowest lows and the things that are split, and we can get a much broader picture of what's going on with somebody. But everything that we've done, everything that we've created, our online workstation for people, all of our computer programs that we share with people, that all started with me just hearing sounds and doing sounds and putting the database together. I am so embarrassed when I think about how we started out and we only knew one or two things, and I'd do a sound, we'd take it back to the lab, and we'd do this, and it'd take 2 or 3 days to do it, and now we can do it in a matter of minutes online with people.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, that was your starting point, it sounds like, so it doesn't seem like there's any reason to be embarrassed, that's for sure. So
well, what I know now, I'm amazed that anybody ever listened to anything I said. I look back and I knew nothing. All I had was this strange talent. And we were helping people with headaches and pain, and I knew there was something to it. And I knew that we just needed to find the science. We still haven't found it, but we've put it enough together to let people know that there's something that works. If you've got a backache and we give you a sound and the backache goes away, you don't make us explain the science.
Exactly.
You're just happy the pain went away.
Yes. So you're saying when you first started out, you had an ability, or you still have this ability to assess someone via how they use their voice, or they didn't even need to use their voice. You could just pick up the sound frequencies through your own abilities. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was just hearing what was coming out of your ears. Like,
okay,
I can hear that your notes around the note of B. So you have a love of humanity. You love purpley blue kind of colors, even into the magenta realm. You don't necessarily love one person at a time as universal, but you love the idea of universally helping people with universal principles. It's the note of the person who gives of themselves for the betterment of all concerned. It's a Pisces kind of quality. It's somebody who wants everything in balance.
Interesting. And then, so you would assess through hearing, and your own abilities, and then how would you provide a healing opportunity for that person? Would you tone with your own voice, or would you intend just through your consciousness a certain tone? How would that work?
You can do it many different ways. You can do it with colors. You can do it with teaching them to tone their own. I would much rather teach them to do their own stuff than be dependent upon me. We can give them sounds through music. We can give them sounds through teaching them to express their own sounds. And there's an article on our site, soundhealthoptions.com. It's in the news, I think, under new articles, and it teaches them how to listen to their own signature sound. That's the best thing right there, because they don't really need anything I have. My rose-colored wish for the world is that we're just going to scientifically prove this is real. We're going to send people back to do it on their own. There's a certain way that you can listen and find the sounds in your ears. That's perfect for you at every moment. And what we take is this static 30 seconds of sound, and a second later, it's not perfect anymore. It's close, but it's not perfect anymore. We have a software, Nano Voice, that people can talk into and see where their balance is or isn't, or what's really good, or I don't want to say bad. There's nothing bad in someone's voice. It's what you do about it. But what's unbalanced or disharmonious, I should say it that way. And the little program doesn't remember your words. It just remembers the sounds of your voice. And it tells you a lot about you. And it's like 5 little clicks and you get a report. The computer just spits it out for you.
I can't wait to try it. I can't wait. But when you were starting way back when, before you developed all of these tools and, did you call it the nano recording? What is it again?
Nano, N-A-N-O, means little. Little voice.
Okay. Great. So before you were able to create that recording device, that recording program. When you provided healing for people, did you sound, or what actually initiated the healing for that person way back when, going back when you first started?
Well, I would do humming. Or sounds. And there's a way that you can hum and push sounds through your teeth, and when your teeth begin to vibrate, you can keep that going and vibrate your whole skeleton, and then your muscles, and then your nerves. So there's a way that you can do it very mechanically. But in this day and age, people don't have time to do that, nor do they want to. There's 2 splits. That there's people who want it done for them, and there's people who want it done, they want to do it for everyone else, or they want to make a difference for their family and their community. So we do both. We have this online workstation where people can go in and give us a 30-second sample of their voice, and it'll give them a printout. Or we teach people to do all this. We have free classes for the public. The big project that we're working on right now is all of those people who got burnt out in Northern California. So we did a computer program database on the toxins of fire retardants, because everybody was getting this croupy crud and they couldn't see and their eyes burning. So they can go on, or anybody, they don't have to be from California, anybody can go on to our site and put their voice in and choose what they want. PTSD is there. Gardasil poisons are there. Neuroplasticity, what nutrients does your brain need? So there's a lot of things that are nutrition and muscles too, what they need. Or we have about 150 softwares that they can choose from if we don't have to have up at the moment the things that they want to know about.
And you already gave your website, but could you give it one more time, please, just so people have easy access to that?
Okay, we have two websites.
Okay.
One is the workstation. That's Sound Health Portal, PLRTAL, like a ship's window, soundhealthportal.com. And those free evaluations are under services, or they can have 30 days to just play around on the portal and use whatever they want. If they can sign in as a guest 30 days at a time.
Wonderful.
The other one is soundhealthoptions.com, and that's where you can download the Nano Voice. There's about 500 videos there to teach you to use all of these softwares. So we really want the public to have this because we feel like a lot of self-healing has been lost when they've sort of stuck science on everything, and we'd like to put healing back into the hands of the people. I just think we have more freedom that way.
Yeah, it sounds to me much more balanced, both between, for lack of a better description, the right and left hemispheres of the brain. So it's not all analytical, but you do address that, the importance of that with your technology, but also the intuitive and the inner knowing that people have within themselves and the importance it is to spark that awakening in people. Can you talk a little bit about your own viewpoints on what you think, like where do you think human consciousness is at the moment? Do you think that we're on a exciting path? Are we a little stuck? What are your viewpoints on that?
I think we're poisoning ourselves. Man-made electricity and toxins and toxic food, bad sex, bad thoughts, bad water. I think we are poisoning ourselves. And if we can find a way to unpoison our minds, I think our society is becoming like attorneys. Originally, when the United States was being formed, there was an amendment that attorneys could not be part of Congress. And right now there's 47% of the people serving in the U.S. Congress are attorneys because they're all the time looking for the other side. What's real? What's spin? And I think that's coming into our political system. And I think by that it has taught us to live with two different sides of everything, and truth with a capital T just doesn't get any function anymore. You listen to some of the spin about what's good for you as a medication and what's good for you as a lipstick or a toothpaste or whatever, and it's become so that money is more important than health. And I think we've lost our way not only with health, I think we've lost our way in the court system. We've lost our way in the government system. That truth with a capital T is not as important as I think it should be, but that's my prejudice. I just think spin. If you have to tell a lie to make yourself look better, make somebody else look bad, then you're going to stress out your own set of frequencies, and you're going to go into a state of dis-ease. And I think we have been taught to lie. Aunt Maud calls and you say to your kid, tell her I'm not home, and there you stand. And people think that's not a bad lie. You need to be able to say, Aunt Maud, I'm not in the mood to talk to you right now.
I agree.
Clear yourself of all that junk, because I think we're making ourselves sick. I think somewhere along the way, as we moved from animal to sort of human, which is all the same thing, greed in animals is survival. And we as humans have not lost that yet.
I agree. So do you feel like we're in a difficult place right now then in terms of our evolution with our human consciousness?
Yes, I think we've separated things from their parts. Like an herb has everything in it to make it work and digest itself. And we've taken things so far apart to the nth degree that we forgot how to connect all the things that go with it.
I do see, though, that because the mechanistic separation way of viewing life and treating people and treating each other, it's not working, and it's creating disharmony and, as you said before, dis-ease in people. I feel like people are actually trying to find their way back. Just the fact that JP has his radio, and the two of you have had beautiful conversations on there, and there's people that are interested in listening. I'm seeing people actually wanting to wake up and wanting to remember. I think we are in a state of forgetfulness. We forget that our true nature is actually, if you want to say, connected to the divine or connected to everything else, that we're not separate. I think people are actually trying to find their way back.
But there's not a lot of reward for it yet. It's
not yet. Well, there's not a lot of materialistic reward for it. But I think that when you start to explore that idea of, or you start feeling that remembrance within yourself of being connected, there's this bliss that you can access that does transcend the material. But so do you think you were talking about, just being in a room with like electronics and other devices. So do you feel like electronic devices, computers, those kind of things almost create a wall for us, like kind of create this wall? Maybe it's low frequency sounds. I don't really know. This is not my...
I think it depletes our electrolyte, our minerals.
Okay. So depleting.
And doing that makes us anxious and depressed and upset because we just don't have the pure minerals that we need to allow our cells to talk to each other. The minerals are how the cells communicate. They're positively and negatively charged. And a thought, we don't know how the thoughts are created or where they come from, but the mineral contains the consciousness, the thought, and it jumps on the next cell and knocks that one off, and that's how we communicate with each other, through electrolytes. A lot of people who come in here to the clinic who are totally sensitive to the computers or the microphones or whatever, it's usually always electrolytes. But two things that you said, when you touch on this, it's another dimension as far as I'm concerned, where this bliss and peace and grace come from. It's hard to explain to people who've never touched it. Now, I use the sounds in my head to astral out. People think that's kind of nuts, but I enjoy it. Just being without a body and kind of flying around. And I thought that was my bliss and my peace until 2 years ago when I fell off a second-story balcony. And I broke my back in 3 places. And I remember hitting the first, I don't know what the first thing was, but it smashed the side of my face in. And then I was with this old lady. She was sitting on a rock, a gray rock, and she had her legs outstretched. She had on an old linen long skirt. It was coarse. She was black. She had a thing tied around her head, kind of tight, and a bandana kind of thing. And she was watching these kids play out here in front of her in this kind of circly thing. And they were playing with these bulbs of light like you would see, colors like in gasoline on the ground on cement, those purples and yellows that were so vibrant. And she looked at me with askance, like, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. And I understood from her that this was probably a near-death experience. And the next thing I know, I had my hand on a scaffold pumping my arm, pumping air back into my lungs. And I came back, and yes, it hurt, but I was in this state of bliss that was 10 times bigger and better and heartfelt, and everything was different. And the ideas of who people were and what they were doing, it just changed my entire life. I don't think not because I knew there was something beyond death and that it was pleasant. There were people there who understood what was going on. But it was something about not a lot of this matters. So, but when people get there, that was so hard to try to explain to my husband. And it was like, okay, Earth to Sharry, come on back down.
I'm sure.
Things that mattered before didn't. Arguments didn't matter. If I said something was this way and he said something was, I'll just give you a real example. We had a fire pit I built at the house and had for the kids to roast wieners, and part of it was falling off down the hill. And I mentioned that to my husband, and he said, you're imagining things. And any other time I would have argued with it. Can't you see this? Can't you see how it fits in that tree and blah, blah, blah. And my thing was, he can't see it yet. Doesn't matter to him. He'll figure it out. It didn't matter to me that my opinion, didn't matter. It just wasn't part of the equation. It just didn't matter because that was his learning. And it's not that it made me pull away from people, but it allowed me to accept people in their learning. They didn't have to be like me. I didn't have to teach them lessons. It's just too hard to explain. I'm just digging myself a hole here in words that I can't explain.
I think you're illustrating it really beautifully, actually. It just seems like you're not as engaged in the dramas that create suffering.
I like that. Because it doesn't have to be there.
Yeah. I engage a lot. I engage a lot in dramas, and in my own personal life, and that is something that I aspire to. But I do have glimpses of what you're talking about. They're just short-lived at this point.
Well, I created two flyers or posters or whatever, and one of them said, my husband loves tomatoes, but I don't like them. I don't insist he abstain. He doesn't insist I imbibe. If only people's opinions could be so distinctly honored.
It's true, and it can be that simple. It doesn't have to be as complex as we sometimes make it out to be, I think.
And the other one was, I don't have to prove myself right. I guess I said I don't have to prove you wrong to know I'm right. And it's two people dancing in joy in it and loving each other.
That's wonderful.
I'll send them to you.
Oh, thank you. Yes. I know. I can't wait to dig into all of your material. It seems like you have been so generous with everything that you know you're willing to share very generously. In Ayurvedic medicine, we try to reach a state of svastha, which is to be established in oneself. That's the optimal state of health. It's called svastha. And it sort of sounds like what you're talking about, your perspective on how you interact with others, really talks about svastha, to be established in yourself. It's not dependent on someone treating you a certain way or disagreeing or agreeing with you. It's just kind of living your life in the present. But I feel like I'm taking us off of your wonderful sound healing work, taking us on a tangent, which I guess is okay. So I have a question for you. Since I'm a practitioner in Ayurvedic medicine. How do you suggest someone like me integrate the kind of work that you do so that I can work with my clients and patients? Do you have any thoughts about that? I don't know if you need any questions.
I do, and I have a story. I just did your vocal print, and I just sent it to
you did?
On your Skype.
Thanks.
So hope you enjoy that. I think, in my opinion, that we all need to know what our foundation is without all the oughts and shoulds. And once we have a handle on that, then we can better meet people where they are. We're not fearful that they're different from us. And in looking at your vocal print, and you have all of this G sharp, and it's in an octave that you want the best physically for everyone, and that's where your energy concentrates. If people find out what their balance is, whatever they're talking about, or whatever, and it shows it on this little program, which sort of reveals your secret self. Once you find you, then you can easily just sort of ooze into someone else, but at the same time, you don't mind what that person is or thinks. And I'll give an example. We had somebody come into the lab here, and I walked into the lab from the other room, and the air was sort of dirty yellow. And I just thought, oh, I'm hallucinating. Didn't connect it to this person at all. So it ends up, he had cataracts. And I didn't ask what he had, didn't want to know, because I wanted my data to be clean. I said, what's it like to have cataracts? And he said, oh, the air looks kind of dirty yellow. I had walked into the room, became his frequency, almost became his person in how he was perceiving out his eyes and out his ears. And
then returning back to yourself.
Yes.
Very easily.
Yeah, I'm a water sign, so I use water to do that. But sometimes when we ooze into someone else, we see or feel things that are, well, she's not as pretty as I thought, or her skirts hanging, or slips hanging, or something weird. So you have to be very stable in your own foundation before you can go meet somebody completely in theirs. Because you pick up all their fears and apprehensions and everything that's going on, and that's frightening when you don't know how to separate back into your own being. And people, this is probably in part of Ayurvedic medicine too, where they say people are fire, earth, air, and water. And fire people could use smudge or fire or a candle. And air people could use a fan to get back to your own center, or to get back to your center and move everything away, starting a tiny speck of white light in wherever your center is, your third eye, beneath your breastbone, and push everything away that's not you, so that you become this white light again. And you'll feel a little surge of energy as it comes. Other people can do it for you, clear your energy. Do it by staring at a candle. But the important part is getting back to your beginning, and think about the sperm and the egg coming together. The very first chemical made is white light.
There's actually an actual spark, right?
Yes. They don't know where it comes from because it's not in the sperm or the egg, but they can measure it, and it's ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and that makes everything else begin to divide and happen.
Do you know what sound that is?
Yes, it's halfway between B and C.
Okay. Does it relate to Om at all, or no, as far as you know?
Well, Om can be sang in many different in many different ways.
Right.
But I could get my trusty calculator out here and figure out what frequency that really is. But that energy, that biochemical, is kept in your eyeball, whatever's extra. And then when you die, that implodes, and you see all this brilliant, bright, white light. So there's that beginning of creation with white light, and there's the end with white light, and there's the beginning esoterically, and there's the scientific of it. We are both precious, scientific, math-based, memory-based, ancient-based entities, and we don't have to walk the line of one or the other.
Does that biochemical, that light that's created at the spark of your creation when the sperm and the egg meet, and then it gets stored in the eye, so it gets stored for the person's lifetime within the eye? Is that what you're saying? There's an actual substance?
Yeah, it's all over the body.
Okay.
But a lot of it gets stored in the eye. It's 254 cycles per second.
Okay. I'll write that down. Great. In Ayurvedic medicine, there's different therapies, like I talked about before. So there's therapies that work with all of the senses. So, taste, touch. For this sense of touch, one of the therapies we used is Marma Chikitsa. So it's a practitioner will touch certain points on the patient's body, and they're believed to be these little micro doorways of perception. And so I wonder if it's actually, even though we're using our hands, our fingertips, different fingertips to press on these points, I wonder, is it really just frequency? It's actually a specific vibration of sound that is connecting during that moment of touch.
Well, let's go back to look at auras, and people think aura is an energy center,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really not. It's a place where energy comes and goes in the body, and the most neutral place where C comes through the body is at the base chakra, and B is at the crown chakra, and this 254, by the way, is very close to your sound. It's a note of B. So if you're looking at the combination of this idea of auras, and then look at acupuncture that's been with us for thousands of years. They stick a needle in a certain part and twirl it, and you set up this little static charge. But there is another basis of acupressure.
That's what Marma Chikitsa is, yes.
Yeah, they're measuring that. And the best indication of that I've ever read was a veterinarian that shaped a dog and put a little bit of phosphorus in a spot in the dog where one of these points was identified. And even though there was no system, no veins or arteries or whatever, the phosphorus went all over the body of the dog everywhere.
I believe it.
And then a few days later, he put some phosphorus in a point where it was not identified as one of these points, and it just stayed there in a little puddle.
Oh, that's a great way to prove the therapy. That's wonderful.
And I think people who are intuitive feel these centers, whether they are a point where energy is void and it can be entered there, or whether it's giving off an energy. I don't know. I see the chakra centers as much like a shopping center, in the back door, out the front. So, an avenue, a conduit where energy lives. Right,
exactly. And the chakras are just the more major wheels of the body, but the points on other parts, the nadis, the marma points, those are just the smaller chakras, if you will.
Think about this. All of these different ways, acupuncture and Ayurvedic and herbs and oils, and cultures developed them because they knew that system was there, and that was their way to open people for intervention. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is, and it's been around for a long time. And so I think what we do as humans is we forget and then we remember, because there is actually a joy in the process of remembering. Perhaps that's what happened to you when you had your near-death experience. You were able to remember a little bit more.
I just recently wrote a paper about how we are frequency-based entities. There's this guy named Francis Frick. He was the discoverer of DNA. And he said, we are all seedlings. There's nothing in here that would allow us to create a DNA. Nothing on the planet that would allow that. But I think frequency and the octaves of frequency is how everything got created, whether it's the planets and the Big Bang Theory or the biochemicals or the hormones. I think it was all created from frequencies, like music coming together. This note equals this chord. And I just think we created that from our intuitiveness, our intrinsic knowledge about how we were created. And we created music in our image, and computers, we created those in the image of our brain, and we created bigger and better and faster ones. And books we created in the image of our memories, and on and on and on. We are creating from the depths of our soul, of cells, the very first cell. I have this idea about sentientness, that we don't know where our life spark, our sentientness, our feelings, our consciousness comes from. And I think if you put all that in one pot, the trees and the turtles and the carrots and the rocks, they're just slow life forms, all sentientness, all consciousness in one pot, that to me is God. And if we knew that we're all a part of that unity, if we really could drill down and see that from our beginning spark, we wouldn't be hurting other people because it would be smashing our own fingers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Where is your center located?
Mine underneath. My center's underneath my breastbone.
Yeah. That's great.
The actual center here where we do all this work is in Ohio.
Okay. And can people visit and receive that work, or is it?
Yes, they can. Or
okay.
We can do a lot for them online if they want to send us a vocal print.
Okay.
We would rather teach them to do this on their own. So every month we have 2-day classes, all day, 10 to 4, and they're free to people, and we also provide the software to them. They have to buy a microphone, and if I was rich, I'd give them that. But we teach people to do this for themselves, to actually set up their own business and their own center to do it. Marketing classes go with it later, and case study classes. We ask for data back
okay.
To teach this to people, and I think I finally discovered that I want to teach everybody else to do it so I don't have to do so much work.
Sure. That makes total sense. And are you attracting all different kinds of people from all different fields, or is there a certain group of people that seem to be seeking out your work?
People from all over the world take these classes because they're online. They're welcome to come here, but you can do it just as well online, and you don't have to pay for all the travel and whatever. But belly dancers, realtors, MD, oncologists, physicists, housewives, high school kids doing a project, we've had them every place from 14 to 90 something, and every place in between. Good. That's great. But we do have a problem.
Okay.
In discovering this, I kept it to myself because I was afraid. I was afraid that the FDA, Federal Drug Administration, or the Center for Disease Control, or somebody would come in and take it and make me stop. So I sort of kept it to myself. The other part of it was I knew it worked, but if we let it out to people and we created a need we couldn't fill, then we were in trouble too.
Sure.
So we've been letting this out a little bit at a time, but we really need more people trained. We need trainers. We need people who will learn this well enough to take it back and teach it in their own communities, in their own countries. So we're just now stepping out, putting our toes in the water, doing radio shows, telling people about this. in the hopes that it'll just go viral.
That's wonderful. And I'm happy to try to get the word out there for you. And I look forward to also doing some of the work and learning more. So thank you so much. We're actually coming to the end. So I know that you gave your website. Is there any other contact information that you wish to give to the listeners at this point?
Well, if they want to get in touch with me, it's just my name at Gmail. And I want to remind people, that's my opinion, that there's nothing good or bad in your vocal print. It's what you do about it that makes the difference.
So the vocal print is the starting point.
Yes. The little nano voice program is the place to start. And they can download that right from soundhealthoptions.com under downloads. And there's lots of charts and videos there for them to learn to use it with aplomb.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Sharry. Okay, so this is Sharry Edwards, and do visit her site. And anyone that feels called to, this is a wonderful opportunity to explore and learn about her work so that you can also be of service to yourself and others. So thank you, Sharry. I'm going to just stop the recording.